Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Janet Weeper and I have the privilege of chairing our meeting. Welcome to those who are viewing online. And I'd also like to have a special welcome today of all the people in the Galleria. And a special welcome to the Te Arawa members, Mr. Rawiri Waru, Anna Morrison, and Potawa Bisinye Tuli, so welcome. I understand you're not starting your meetings until April, so you're going through orientation. So I was expecting you today, but that's fine. Thank you. And also welcome to members of the Inner City group. Good to see you here. So I'd like to call for apologies, please. And we already had two received from Councillor Kent and Tapsil. Any other apologies? No. It's moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Gould. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Declarations of interest? Urgent business. Councillor Bentley, then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the candy stripes we've got on the roads now, are we going to get any more of them, and will it be discussed?
Okay, it will be discussed in the operational part of the report, so those types of operational matters can be brought up through that section. Mr. Foster's part of the report of our meeting today. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had two items. One of them was about the road, the signs on the crossings, because I want to know whether they are legal, because we've got a new Health and Safety Act coming in place on the 1st of April.
And Councillor Gould, I just said.
Yeah, I realise that.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the other one?
Second item is the Tenai Road upgrade of $24 million. It is confusing with one council member. He thinks there's an overpass involved, and I don't believe there's an overpass involved. And what does that 24 million cover?
Okay, Councillor Gould. So that can come up in the operational part of the report as well, under Mr. Foster's section. Okay? So that's the right place for that, so we'll discuss it then. And he will give you the detail he has got. Thank you. Moving on now to, would someone please like to move that the minutes of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held on the 4th of February 2016 be received? Councillor Sarank, seconded by Councillor Rokawa Tate. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Recommendation 1, operational report. So this is page 10, and here we have Thomas coming to lead us through this. So could I just have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Sturt, seconded Councillor McVicker. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Good morning, Thomas. We've got our dashboard in front of us again, which I think is a really great way of seeing how we're progressing. So I'll leave it to you to lead us through that. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Carol, if you could just bring up the presentation. Great, thank you. So councillors, this is the updated dashboard for the organisation. So you'll recall that the progress towards Rotorua 2030 and the performance measures are only done quarterly, so they're exactly the same as when we reported last month. What has been updated is the financials. So, I've gone too fast. So I will go into a bit more detail on the financials in the next report. But to date, it's very pleasing that both operational revenue and operational expenditure are tracking well against budget. The forecast for year-end on operational expenditure, it is expected to go over budget by a little bit, but that is generally as a result of revenue being up as well, and the cost associated with getting that extra revenue. Capital expenditure has been forecast down, and we'll go into a little bit more detail in the next report with regards to what those changes are and what the impact of that will be on obviously our debt forecast as well as the 10-year program going forward. And with regards to the health and safety stats and the human resources stats, the positive trends that we've had have continued. So with regards to the staffing limits and where we sit, we've had a small increase in FTE numbers, but we're still well with underneath our cap. We've seen a slight increase with regards to the unplanned leave, so that's effectively sick leave. So as you'd expect over the December-January period where staff are mostly on holiday, it does drop quite significantly, and then as the staff come back full-time, you see a small increase over time as well. Employee turnover, pleasing that the rolling 12-month average has dropped slightly from probably a high of 18.9, and as we said last month, that is a focus for the HR team and management as well, and with the goal of trying to get that down to about a 10% target. Leave balances as well. So historically we did have a number of staff that had very high leave balances. There's been a strategy put in place with regards to attending to that. And as you can see, there's been a steady decline in that, and we hope in February for that to continue, and that will obviously be monitored going forward as well. And then with regards to health and safety, I did give an undertaking last month that the rolling 12-month average would drop this month because of obviously an injury that occurred 12 months that pushed the average up, which you can see that spike in January 15, but it's actually next month where that will be reflected, and we've had a pretty good period with health and safety, and next month we expect that average to drop significantly. So that's it with regards to that, unless any member has any questions regarding the dashboard.
Councillor Sturt.
Are my observations correct in that the operational expenditure seems to be favourably down, but in the capital works program, core services are slightly up, i.e. open spaces and recreation, roading and footpath and water supplies, which are core council services. The expenditure appears to be considerably, and particularly roads and footpaths, over budget. Is that as a result of submissions received from the people in mobility scooters and all that to correct some of the issues that we're having in terms of access and that sort of thing? Do you know?
It's a good question. Thomas, do you know why?
So councillors, the budget line, which is the black line, reflects the 85% funding that's been put in place. So what this shows is that inner city services, open spaces and roads and footpaths are actually looking to deliver 100% of their program. So that means that if you look at their individual spend against budget, because we've only allocated the 85% funding, it does look like they're spending more. Remember, we are managing that overall 85% envelope across council. So within that, the capital spend at the moment is looking to be about $8 million less than what was budgeted, and well within the funding that was set.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you, Thomas, for your report. Your operational expenditure year to date, you've got 67.6 million, and you've got an orange figure, which indicates it's not going to be very good. What do you expect it to go to? Do you expect it to go to about 80 million, 85 million for the next 5 months?
So, Councillor, if you look at page 39, we expect our operational spend to lift to about 114 million by year end, which will be about 156,000 more than budget, and that's a direct result partly with regards to the extra revenues that the museum and consenting and areas are seeing, which is also driving a little bit of additional cost in as a result.
And look, I'll go to who worship the mayor, but just perhaps questions on page 39, if we could just perhaps leave it till then so it's kind of in some sort of order, that would be appreciated. Probably this executive dashboard should have been after that, or just prior. So we'll just, if we can just try and keep the order in of the papers at the moment. We'll do that one after. Right, Your Worship?
Yes, I'd quite like to see, as we're watching this unfold, some little notes, because I'm very aware of health and safety. Asked to go to the nursery and they've had no lost time days at all. That's outstanding, and a little note for in here of the good and the bad actually helps us understand a bit more. Now, I know you're trying to keep it all on one sheet, but that's outstanding at the nursery, and yet how would other councillors know it? So it might be quite good to put notes, just like a financial report notes.
I guess we'll leave that to staff to figure out how
Yeah.
we could do it without it getting messy and unable to be read unless we had another page of notes or something. I'll leave that to you. We won't figure that out today, but good point, because I had no idea about the nursery either. So thank you for that. Anything else on the executive dashboard? No, we'll move on then. So we've done that. So now we're up to, thank you, Thomas. So now we're up to JP with this, yes, it's Councillor. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. Councillor McVicker.
Under property and investments, what we are doing now, you've indicated an earthquake report on energy event centre sports from confirms satisfactory. What about the others? Where do we stand with those?
So Sigma has generated a report for us with regards to the status of each of our buildings. We've actually engaged another consultant, Becca, and we're working with Becca on developing a draft policy for council to have a look at. So part of it is actually ranking each of the individual buildings with regards to importance, identifying therefore what we believe the NBS standard should be for each of those buildings. And then we will look to have a discussion with council with regards to the draft policy and seek feedback on that. I understand I've got a meeting scheduled next week with Becca on that, so I can't imagine it's too far away, Councillor.
Sri?
Just a question on the last paragraph, what's coming up under property and investments, and we're working with EV and our water teams of future plans for the floating wetland, etc. Can you elaborate on it, please? What options are presenting at the moment, and what is the state of the floating wetland at the moment?
I'm not too sure on the status of that, councillors. I'll have to check with Andy Bell, but I understand that Andy Bell has been attending those meetings as well and working with the iwi with regards to the work that needs to take place on that front. I'll report back at the next meeting.
I would like to know, because I had an interest in the wetland. It doesn't look too good at the moment. It's got evidence of breaking up. So I do believe it deserves a report of some kind.
I'm sure we can have that either to Netstow and M if you need it urgently before that, Councillor Strank. I'm sure we can, as long as it's not a too comprehensive report, a reply, I think would be suffice to all of us through email perhaps.
Also include from Andy, the extensions of the wetland habitat at the airport, because that's been hanging around us for a long time too. That was part of the resource consent.
Well, we'll see, Jeff. All right? Okay, we'll do an update. Councillor Donaldson, then Bentley.
Just as a partial response through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Srank's question, I am aware through the Land Treatment System Project Steering Committee that there have been out of that committee some discussions with Water Solutions and iwi about the placement of the floating wetland that might be considered dependent on what is the final solution for the discharge for the treated wastewater. So it's still an area under discussion. I can't answer any questions about the actual whether the wetland is in danger of being broken up or anything like that. I walked past it or rode past it on the family fun ride the other day, and I remarked on how the plant life was flourishing, but I didn't see any bits floating away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a query with regard to the siting of the wetlands, in that it's an area, the wetlands is an area that is populated with many, many birds, and I wonder if situating this thing beside the airport is such a good idea.
And I think we've got a lot of questions there, and from what I heard from Councillor Donaldson, they're all being worked through, and it's about looking at the bigger picture and how it all folds in together. Did you want to add to that particular one before I go to Councillor Maxwell? Yes.
So the reason why we built a floating wetland and we have to build another terrestrial wetland is to mitigate the extension of the airport runway, which actually filled in a wetland that was off the end of the airport runway. So there were pukekos and ducks and everything flopping around in a wetland off the old runway before it was extended. So, you know, that's just part of managing an airport. There'll be waterfowl all around a lake.
Thank you. My one's not on the wetlands, but I think that wetlands was built for the last Lions visitor here, so that's how long ago it's been around. My question's on the property and investments. It says here, the first bullet point, the vehicle fleet business, there's further efficiencies. Can you just elaborate, Thomas, where you're saying on cutback on numbers? I thought we've done that already.
Yep. So, Councillor, there's a two-stage approach being taken with regards to a project to analyse our fleet. The first has been analysing our pool vehicles, so they're the vehicles that sit directly below us and are available for all staff to use. We've done the analysis on that fleet usage for the last couple of years and have identified that the majority of the fleet, 80% of their use, their round trip is less than 20 kilometres and they sit still for a 3-4 hour period, and so therefore the kilometre usage of them is quite low. We've identified 3 vehicles that we're going to be disposing of out of that fleet to shrink the size as a result of that, and we'll do ongoing monitoring of that to make sure that we maximise the utilisation of that fleet. The second part of it is now looking at the vehicles that are directly allocated to staff members. So these are vehicles like wastewater treatment plant officers and water engineers and those sorts of things. And also looking at the utilisation of that to ensure that it is being utilised at the correct level and see whether any decisions need to be made as to whether we could reduce the fleet or the opposite if we needed more. So.
Stuart?
Madam Chair, when the report comes back, you said you've engaged another group of consultants. I just wondered if the stadium is the focus there as well, because we've got some big events next year. I wouldn't want anything to disrupt them. And the other one is the ex-Victoria arterial properties. Could you just advise me what the method of sale for those properties has been decided, please?
So on the first one, Councillor, the stadium is included in that report. On the second one, the recommendation from our real estate agent is to put them to auction. We're considering as to whether that's the best method or whether a tender or expressions of interest or something is more appropriate with regards to maximising its value, and we'll be having discussions with them in the next couple of days. So.
Everyone's asked their questions. Thank you, Thomas, and we'll see you again shortly. So, welcome JP and Portia for the City Focus refresh to update us on what's happening there. So is this quite a detailed design you're bringing today?
Madam Chair, just can I, as Portia sits down, I'll just take a step back. Obviously we've got quite a detailed section in here on what's happening within the Strategy and Partnerships group. But councillors, we've got 2 presentations today. Obviously the first one is Portia about the inner city update. The other one was a request around where we're up to on the library project. And the third one that had previously been requested was an update on online voting. I've signalled in the report that Cabinet has deferred their decision until the end of March, so we're just proposing to bring the online voting update to the next meeting. So we've just got 2 presentations to take you through today.
I understand you've got some visitors with you. Do you want to introduce them as you go through? Or? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mayor and Councillors. I'm here today to give you a quick update around City Focus, because I'm sure you all want to know exactly where we're at the moment. So what we've been doing since the decision in November of last year is we've gone into hiding around detailed design, gone to ground, so to speak. So everyone's busy working away in their offices with consultants and all the engineers together. What I do have for you today is to be able to show you some more of the details around the perspective. So there's a lot more detail in here than when you last saw the concept designs last year. So you can see here the pillars coming through as well. Some of the seating elements have been detailed up. We're working hard around the cobbling and the design of the road and traffic areas as well, and also around the planting. You can see some of the elements coming through on the seating here as well. So lots of use of timber. These seats are designed to take bikes as well, so they're bike stands as well as seats at the same time. You can see the mistscape system, so we're talking heavily with providers around the mistscape system as well, coming in, so sort of showcasing that geothermal as well. One of the other things that I need to update you on today was at the end of last year, through Councillor Sarank and Councillor Sturt, we had the request to go and have a conversation with the retailers about the car parking, the central car parking. So what I did was I went and walked and talked all of the retailers down that end of Hinemoa Street and down Hinemoa Street about the central parking to see what the feeling was about removing that central car parking. A lot of them were happy for the central car parking to remain, and while they recognise that yes, it can be there can be some issues with people driving down there and people reversing out of the car parks, a lot of the businesses said that they actually quite enjoy the slow traffic environment down there, and they said, some of them said, I'd prefer it to be slow than it to be like Pukuatua or Awera Street where they go quite fast. So, and a lot of them would prefer that car parking to stay. So that's one of the conversations we've gone and had. Part of that conversation also brought about other issues that are happening down Hinemoa Street to the west, down by the Quest area. So a lot of them brought up, and we've got Colin from the Quest here today, from a request from Colin was to consider better access for the guests, for getting out of the cars, unloading their luggage, and getting checked in at the Quest. So I'll just show you what we've been working on down there to accommodate that. Because you can see what the underlying aerial here at the moment, and this is the Quest here. So you can see as they come in, if these car parks are full, they will either stop here in the middle of the traffic lane or pull into the service lane here and block the service lane. Also, there's an entrance here, so people are turning around here and doing U-turns, and what they'll do is they'll come in, they'll stop, they'll reverse and go around. And so that's causing some issues there, and it has been for some time. With the Quest being at 100% occupancy at a lot of times through the summer and the spring months, it does cause some issues there. So what we've gone and looked at, how can we create that drop-off zone, and how can we fill in that car parking area in there as well? So filling in that gap with car parks and enabling that drop-off area as well. So walked and talked again, talking to all the retailers about were they happy with that. The majority of them said yes, because the Quest brings in a lot of guests to that area, and those guests of course go and get around all of those shops. They were really happy to accommodate that drop-off zone, but also really happy to fill in that gap as well because of the safety issues. So that's a little bit of an update. At the moment, this is we're still working on the detailed design, so we haven't got to the end of detailed design yet, but we're looking at a loss of about 3 to 4 car parks in here. There is an opportunity, we're looking down the other end, to gain those car parks back, so we're still working on getting those car parks back and making it car park neutral. that was something that we talked to all of the people around here. You know, it will result in a loss of 3 to 4 car parks down this end. Are you happy with that? And again, they all said to gain the efficiency and to accommodate the quest, they were quite happy for that to happen. Just around the timeline as to where we're at, so you can see the governance stream happening there last year, so around the decision making through SBNF, the consultation that was happening around the concepts through July through to August last year, and then a decision being made at SBNF in November. Of course, the consultation now is more moving into around engagement and communication now that that decision's been made, and we're in the detailed design phase at the moment. Detailed design is expected to be complete in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll go to tender on that design. We'll tender through April and looking for a build after Easter. And remember that after Easter decision was with the retailers. It was the retailers that were driving that, saying, you know, try to minimise the disruption until after Easter. Some of these dates here are a little bit fluid at the moment because it all depends on when we get contractors out on site. So we're looking hopefully around August, September for a completion. One thing I'm here today to specifically announce to you, though, is that we've been working with potential partners in the last couple of weeks and seeing who was interested in coming on board and supporting this project. I can confirm today that we have secured a major partner with us on City Focus, and that is Donnelly Sawmills and Abodo. We have Aaron Donnelly here with us today from Donnelly Sawmills. What they're providing is they're coming on board to provide all of the timber elements within City Focus at a discounted rate, and they're also providing all their R&D specialists to us to use as well. So what's happening at the moment is the R&D specialists are getting together with the landscape architect, and what's going to come out of that is going to be something pretty spectacular because it's going to really showcase what we can do with our local wood products. So this is some of the designs that are coming out of that at the moment around the pillars. Following on from the design mirrors the ripple effect around the lake. So the timber there is directly coming out of our forests, our local forests, using our local experts to create this. There's 3 different types of timber products in there as well, which creates some different colours and some different contrasts. They're also working on lighting those pillars up as well. So if you get a little bit closer, they're also looking at lighting them up at night, and so that with LED lights they can change colours. We can have blue September and all of that as well. What this partnership means to Rotorua is that we can showcase our timber products, but it also means that we can get a better quality product as well. So, and that's something pretty exciting. We're also currently in the process of talking to 2 more partners as well. Spoke with one yesterday, and so we're hoping to confirm that today. And we're also in discussion with another partner today as well. So there may be some more opportunities there. I think that's me. If anyone has any questions.
There are. I just want to say that's very exciting to see the plans coming through, and thank you, Mr. Donnelly, for your your contribution. We appreciate that. It's fantastic. So thank you very much. So questions, Councillor Sturt.
The yellow indications are what's currently there. Is that right?
No, what's currently there is the aerial, so the image underneath, the aerial photo underneath. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the yellow.
The yellow is the new
will
layer.
be the new configuration.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Because I was just wondering if I was coming down Henimoa Street and I wanted to go round to the quest, I thought I'd have to use the new road configuration. No, that's
yeah,
fine.
No, come down and around.
That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
That's cool. Did you think of, Portia, any treatment similar to that for the Regency, you know, where everyone, you know, the Regent, the old post office building? You know, with all, they're all rented as well, or tenant.
For these apartments over here?
Yes, the Royal, sorry.
The access to these apartments, they have their own car park and
At the
ramp
rear,
and everything out
that's
the
right.
back, yeah.
But the main entrance is...
Yeah. Because they're apartments, they don't have as much
Oh,
demand
for
for the
drop-off,
drop-off,
okay.
for the luggage and
Fair enough.
everything, yeah.
I'm fully supportive of that, Madam Chair. Looks really good.
Okay, so now we have Councillor Gould, Donaldson, and then Her Worship, the Mayor. And
Thank you for your report, Portia. With the night market on a Thursday night, and at the moment the Hennessy's block gets blocked off at just after 2 o'clock roundabout, is there still provision for cars to use Hirimaa Street and getting around, easy getting in and out? Because if they happen to go down the street and find they can't turn right coming from the Fenton Street end, will they be able to turn and there be enough space around for that particular operation? And also when people drop off things at the night market, they need an area to stop their vehicle, unload their vehicle and park it in the right place.
Yes, the night market's been something we've been specifically making sure that the design accommodates for. So you can see here, this is Hinamoa Street coming down here and Tutanekai coming down here. If we were to block off, say, this area here, if there was a road closure just across there, across Tutanekai Street, that means that people coming into the night market can come in and turn around here quite easily, and also the same down this end. But it also means that Hinamoa can go straight through still, and it also means that people coming along Tutanekai Street can still turn left and they can turn right. So it almost turns into a T intersection for the night market. And that means also that the night market can spill up into City Focus and use that more as well.
Donaldson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Portia, I think I raised at an earlier meeting the issue of the gaps in between the central parking and also the parking that's stacked out from the Green Corridor further down Hinimaa Street towards Fenton Street, and were they all necessary, and could we fill those in and crib back some car parking through that? You mentioned that you were looking at that for Hinimaa Street West, but Hinimaa Street East, are you looking at down that way as well?
Yes, that's exactly where we're looking at trying to get back the car parking down here, but also as a request from some of those business owners there as well, saying that exact same thing as people are trying to turn. You can see it there. People are trying to turn here. They stop because you can't make the full turning circle. Then they reverse, and it's the same kind of issue. So,
and I've always had an issue with those turnarounds because it's not only that issue, but it's if you're pulling out of a car park that is adjacent to one of those turnarounds, you need to look in about 3 directions. And I recall a number of fender benders where people have been reversing out and they don't see the car looping around. They're looking down the road from behind where they're pulling out.
That's
so
right,
it is a safety issue as well.
yes.
Yes, I just want to comment on the wood first features, and Aaron, it's fantastic that the Donnelly Mill is coming to town. That's great as pioneer sort of millers here. One of the questions that we inevitably get asked later, and we found it with the first contribution, you know, on the corridor when they laid the concrete, I'm sure Aaron doesn't mind, but at some stage we'd love to know the value of that contribution, because that's incredibly generous, and we seem to be asked a lot of questions about the cost of everything. But that's a huge saving for us, and so it would be good if we could quantify that at some stage in the future.
Yes,
that contribution.
Yes, that's a good point. We haven't quite at this point yet determined the quantities, but once we do that, we'll be able to work that all out.
Yeah.
But it's also the value of the specialist experts as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your report, Portia. It's really good to hear that sort of positive thing. I've got a couple of questions with regard to how are we going, are we on budget with this? I know it's still early in the piece, but I'd like to know where the costs are going. And it is great to see the use of timber. It's much, much better than aluminium, I'm sure. And good luck for the future.
The question was about how are we tracking with the budget?
Yes, so it is early days, but yes, that's definitely the intention, is to be within the budget that was determined last year.
And I just had a quick question that hasn't been asked so far. So excellent to see the work done to date. I just wondered with the plantings, are we looking at plants that encourage a bit of biodiversity and sustainability and easy to manage? And is that thinking all going around? And even just, there was some water I know you've got the geothermal features, but is there an opportunity to do some clever design with water reticulation or anything like that?
Yeah, that was one of the other work streams of what the consultants are working on at the moment, are the rain gardens as well, and how they're going to work. So there's definitely some thought going into that as well.
Opportunity, isn't it? Yeah. So we've got a couple more things. Yes, Councillor Hunt first. And
mine was just a comment, really, that there is a lot of excitement building about the development of Manawa, of the heart of the city, and it's a huge offer of support from Donnelly, so thank you very much, Aaron. But it really shows that there's a commitment in our community to work together, and that they value what we're doing, and that they are prepared to put their money where their mouth is. And that we've got two other partnerships in the wings shows that our community is really delighted with the changing face of our inner city. So thank you, and thank you, Portia, for all the work done. We are really looking forward to it, particularly to the end of the project.
Likewise, Madam Chair, I'm delighted that the community is stepping forward, but in particular, Portia, the concrete pillars that used to hold the spotlights, what becomes of them? Are they demolished?
The concrete pillars, the peach-coloured ones, those are the ones that will come down during the build, during the construction. Those are the ones that are in the middle of Tūtanakai Street and in Hinamaua Street at the moment. One of the other things I didn't mention was that the sculptures of Hinamaua and Tūtanakai that sit on the brown pillars at the moment, they're coming down today from the original artist who carved those carvings, and he will take them back to his workshop and do some refreshing of those carvings and restore them back to their former glory, and then they will come back and go back onto those pillars as well. We've got some other artwork on the peach pillars, the concrete ones that will come down, and we're currently in discussions with the original artists as to where finding them a location, finding them a new home.
Thing is, Madam Chair, as you know, I'm into recycling. The actual canopies, I know they need huge pillars to hold them up in their current sizing, but I just wondered if there was an opportunity to adapt them to cover over some of the huge playgrounds that we've got. You know, think of the new one at Mamaku, new one going out at Puketawhero Park, and using them as shade cloth, getting them remodeled to use. They don't need the steel structures if the size comes down. I just thought there was it's an absolute waste to discard those and never to be used again. So I just hope some work's been done in the background to see if we can reuse those.
Yes. So we still have those there in storage and looking for opportunities into how to use them. Being mindful that they only do have 5 years worth of life left on them from the assessment that we got on them. So we have to balance as to the infrastructure that we put in place to hold them up, as to the use, the time that we get out of them as well.
And just on that, I know there has been some interest by other people in the community about them, but there was an issue with them being made smaller or something, wasn't there?
Yes, so as soon as we cut them down,
Yeah.
they lose their integrity. So they
Oh,
do
is
have
that
to
it?
remain the size and shape that they are, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more than that. Okay. Anyway, we'll have a chat later. I know there were other people a bit interested in them as well. Councillor Gould.
Yeah, let me have a second question. The construction part you're talking about in the report on page 17 begins in April, and you're talking also in your verbal report September, which means 5 months. Is the noisy part of the construction going to be done after hours?
Yes, so
Because you put off people coming to town if you have a lot of digging noise going on and a lot of dust and bits and pieces flying around all over the place.
yes, so once we go to tender, a lot of those conditions will be written into the contract as to hours of operation. And you'll remember during the demolition, a lot of the works happened at night or in the early hours of the morning, and we do also have to balance with our residents and our backpackers and our guests within the city as well. So it is a bit of a balancing act when it comes to construction, but we found during the demolition, as long as everyone's kept informed and they know exactly what's happening when, then they were quite happy for it to continue.
So is Quest Hotel going to be informed on the days you're going to?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. The Quest's actually quite lucky because they have some pretty serious acoustic treatment in that building. Yeah.
All right, so then we'll just go to Her Worship and then Councillor Okawate, and then I'd like to close off the discussion. And councillors, if you can try, don't want to be too rigid in the meetings, but if you can try and have all your questions in one opportunity, it does make it more simple for keeping the meeting flowing. We go to 2 questions occasionally, but in the interest that this looks a light agenda but can end up taking hours, we just keep that in mind. Thank you, Your Worship.
Well, just a question of clarification. Is Portia staying there when we get onto the inner city portfolio, or could I ask her a question about the courthouse, which is page 17?
I'd like to go with our presentation, and then I will ask the odd question up to page 20 afterwards.
Yep,
All
okay.
right? Thanks. Right. Councillor Okawate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine was about the courthouse as well, so I'll leave that. Thank you.
Keep our order. It helps us, so thank you, Portia. And we will now have our update on the Child and Health Hub. Now, I've got to remember the right way that we're saying it now. The Library Child Health Hub. That's right. I should know that very well. So is anyone joining you, JP?
Yes, Madam Chair. Dave's coming down. We're just going to
yes.
do this as a twin set. As you're aware, it moved sort of late last year in approximately December when you received that last report, which moved us really from the concept and design phase into a delivery phase. So that's really the changeover point. So our presentation is pretty much structured along the same lines. What happened in the concept phases and then what's now happening in the delivery phases. So councillors, we just thought we'd better go back a few steps, and really for us this project started back in 2014, and if you recall, shortly after the realignment process, the Chief Operating Officer and the library team really started talking to you and made an initial presentation about their review of the library services and really starting to develop a strategic plan to meet the sort of current as well as the future needs and aspirations of our community around the library. At the same time, and you're aware, the property team was also looking at some of the issues that were developing across some of our building stock as a lead-in to the LTP process. And the key ones, obviously, around the library was the significant and persistent leak problems that we were experiencing on the top floor. On the flat roof that surrounds that sort of smaller stepped-in piece, which is currently being occupied by Destination Rotorua. So that had led to a number of problems and water leaks down through into the staff area of the building, but also in the stairwells. So we signalled some of that to you. In addition, we'd also highlighted that as part of the last renovations, a number of structural walls had been removed and the advice we had was that they should probably be reinstated to improve the earthquake strength of the building. Not that it's an overall issue, so it was just a safety perspective of saying, well, maybe those walls need to be restored. We're also looking at progressing Rotorua 2030 goal to revitalise the inner city. So that was really where we were at that point in 2014. At the same time, the Lakes DHB had approved funding for a child health centre, and away from the hospital environment, so bringing together a number of their services to try and achieve better integration and a better service for children. Currently they have a number of those services operating out of the hospital or out of Hospital Hill, but also a couple of the specific services that were included within that proposal are currently being delivered in buildings in the CBD. Now, when we first started talking to the DHB, apart from looking at building opportunities on the hill, they had also done a scan of a number of buildings across the CBD to see if they could find a suitable premise to undertake this new development. And at that point they came to us and said, we haven't found anything and we're looking at moving back to the Hospital Hill with our concepts. So we really saw this unique opportunity to say, well, how do we get this down into the city? How do we support revitalisation in the city? And that really led to the conversation about, well, how can council help and be part of that solution? And that's obviously where the library came into the equation as a building that we had some challenges with, and the opportunity there was to bring the DHB in as a tenant and help us achieve some strategic goals for a library renovation. Now, councillors, you remember at that stage then we said, okay, well, this is very high level. We'll put it in the consultation document for the LTP process, so it became one of our 5 issues for consultation in the LTP process. We had to put in obviously some financial estimates, and at that stage the only estimates we had was for the redevelopment of the top floor of the library to address our leaking problems, and we also got some estimates through Becca to renovate around the ground floor tenancy space that was likely to be occupied by the DHB. So that really what drove the $5.4 million that was included within your decision making around the LTP. So once we'd been through the approval phase of the LTP process, again we're still in initial discussions, it was determined that we needed to get a working party together. So an architect was commissioned to help staff from both the DHB across all the service teams that were to be included, and also our library staff to say, okay, well, how is this facility going to be developed in the library? So with the help of an architect and a number of facilitated workshops, they worked through, well, how is this concept going to come together within the library? So we've shown you those concept plans. I think they were in September that we brought them to you. And basically, currently the library occupies roughly 4,400 square metres of the building, which is currently in its current footprint about 5,600 square metres. At the end of that concept phase, and one of the biggest issues, and you can see there the increase in size of the building, is that we were going to reconfigure the top floor so that the smaller top floor, which created the flat roofed area around it where all the leaking problem was, that would be extended out to the full width of the building, so hence the 400 odd square metres of increased footprint for the building. What had come through on that concept was that the DHB would occupy approximately 2,000 square metres, with the library and the shared space occupying about 4,000 square metres. So roughly a 10% reduction. One of the big changes within the concept plan, however, was the major reconfiguration of the library space itself. Over successive renovations of the library, it's kind of crept up in size without fundamentally changing how some of the spaces are used on those individual floors. And as an example, there's a number of meeting rooms that are squeezed up against different ends and of different sizes and oversizes and different proportions. So what had come through in the concept phase was really a chance to look at that and saying, actually, if we looked at the best utilisation of the space, this is how we end up getting significantly more out of a smaller footprint for the library itself. Now, clearly, at the same time, we were continuing to have the conversation about the DHB as a tenant within the building, and based on some calculations that we worked through with the DHB and net present value, so again, looking at the $4 million they were looking at investing into the building in their tenancy area, we were working out an annual rental figure for that. So that's how that was arrived at. So again, the lease is something like 30 to 35 years, so that's the intention in that space. Probably one of the most significant changes was also the opportunity to create a shared staff space on the top floor. So where we currently have the staff occupying the second floor at one end, and destination Rotorua on the top of the library, all the staff issues would be moved to the top of the building, and the lower floors would be used for that customer interaction through both the DHB area and the library. So just some of those main elements again. There would be a single shared main entrance, but there would also be smaller side entrances as required for both the DHB and for the library, but a shared main entrance. Some of the DHB services would be situated on floors where there was also library services. So originally the concept was pretty much the DHB tenancy would occupy just the ground floor, but what came through in the concept was that it would move across all the floors within the library. That actually gave the library staff, as they worked through the concept design, the opportunity to create different spaces and different quiet zones and active zones and a whole range of different kind of spaces through a renovated library. And I've just put a last bullet point on there, which is less about the concept plan, but more about trying to deal with one of the misconceptions that's developing. This is not an emergency department for sick children. This is a wellness centre and a chance for children to receive a whole host of different services. So the synergies that came through extremely strongly during those workshops were some fantastic working between the different staff, and some really innovative thoughts about how the spaces could be used and supported across the library building. So just restating again, councillors, the decision that was made around the LTP was to include approximately 5.4 million based on some very preliminary estimates. So that's all we had leading into the LTP process. It was agreed that any additional funding would support additional features and Jean Batten Square. Now, once we had finished those concept plans, we took those to a quantity surveyor who then looked at the total costs of what had become a more comprehensive redevelopment of the library building, and in particular a full renovation and alteration of the library to maximise the use of the space and really get that library of the future that we're after. So that really moved the cost estimates for the council share, so this is for the library, from 5.4 million to 8.8 million. So we brought that report to you in, I think, early December. So this is the recommendation that was adopted by you in December 2011. So really that it sought to confirm council's support for the library and children's hub. It was very specific about increasing the RLC share of the total project cost from 5.4 to 8.8 million. And obviously the phasing then comes into it. Part of that commitment was to start proceeding with the detailed design phase. Now Dave can talk a bit more about where we're up to on the detailed design phase in the second part, but there was also the budget allocation to move from concept through into the detailed design phase. Now that increase of $3.4 million, apart from the $800,000 to be included in this year's budget, would be spread over the successive 2 years. And one of the conditions that you had said was to confirm that it was possible for this increase in the costs of the library to be accommodated within the existing 85% envelope for our capital expenditure over those 2 years. Now, councillors, at your forum last week, I understand that the Chief Financial Officer has given you an outline of the proposed capital expenditure for next year and the year after, and that information will be brought through to you at the next SPNF committee to confirm that it is possible for this project to be adequately accommodated within your capital expenditure limits for the next 2 financial years. So that's that confirmation and reassurance that you had sought that this project could be accommodated within the LTP. So just again summarising where we're at, so the total project cost based on that quantity surveying, so again we're still at an estimate phase. So we've moved from preliminary cost estimates to estimates based on a concept design. So again, we're getting closer to certainty, and obviously the next part is the detailed design and the tendering, which will help us isolate the costing. But at this stage, we're dealing with a total project envelope of 12.4 million. I've talked about, 12.8, sorry. I've talked about the RLC amount moving from 5.4 to 8.8 through your decision that you made in December. Now, separate to this, councillors, we've started talking to potential partners to help us with the funding of some of that 8.8 and really looking at how we're lifting our services for the library. So that's direct business partners, and also we're starting to prepare applications for various funders who may support this. Now, if you look there, I've talked about the $4 million that the DHB will be spending on their part of the building. This is their tenancy area. So they've committed 3.25 million, and they have a grant from RECT of 750,000. So there's been the question about, so what kind of rent are we receiving from the DHB? And you can see there it's approximately 90,000 per annum, and obviously they're also paying their third of the outgoings for the building over the 35 years. So that's sort of the funding position of the project at this stage. So I was just going to hand over at that point, because that really brings us up to December, when this really is focused now on a delivery project, and hand over to Dave. But I just wonder if there's any questions that might be worth covering at that point.
Questions of you first, Councillor McVicker, then Councillor Serink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, JP, for that update on the financials. I still remain uncomfortable with the 60% increase, but that's by the by. But I'm interested to see $90,000 for 35 years. That equates to about $45 per square metre, which I know you're going to say they will be paying for a portion of the build, and it's all rather convoluted to establish, exactly what the going rate should be. But I would still suggest that $45 a square metre, given their position of say 30% of the building, 25 to 30% of the cost of the building, is ridiculously cheap. And in effect, one could suggest that the ratepayers will be subsidising the DHB because of that low rental. Are we set in concrete with that with the DHB?
Madam Chair, we've taken the steer that you've given us previously, Councillor, that we still wanted to keep the communications and the negotiations around the actual rental amount open. So that's been based on the net present value of the project costs as they currently stand. As we go through into the tender phase and understanding what the final costs are, we're hoping that there may be some opportunity for us to discuss further, but I would suggest that it won't move substantially, but it may move. So they remain open to that discussion based on achieving the net present value and what they've agreed through Treasury on their funding.
Okay, Councillor Serink, then Councillor Gould, and then Her Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I took the time last night to read the original document that was presented to Council, and in that document, the figure spoken of from the Lakes DHB and quoted from the MP, that the grant was $6 million. Now, I see they're contributing 3.25 and rec 750, but why can't possibly cost $2 million for a fit out?
Through you, Madam Chair, the issue again, I can't speculate as to the discussion that was undertaken at the DHB board. So you're right, the Minister had authorised them to spend up to $6 million on this project. It is my understanding that the DHB management and board made a decision about how much was appropriate to spend on this, and that they did not want to spend up to the full $6 million. So that's where they've set limits of a total of $4 million for this project. So that's what they're working toward, and certainly the designs have been focused on ensuring that cost, and it has been QS'd at approximately just over $4 million at the moment. So they need to sort of still aim through the detailed design phase of bringing it back to what they've set as their envelope of $4 million.
I may ask, does that include the fit out? Well, I make the comment, if they were offered $6 million, why are ratepayers being asked to put up all that extra? That's just, I cannot follow that at all.
And then we'll...
I think the important thing here to clarify is that they are renting, being a tenant over an area of the building, so they are paying for that part of the building. So that is what they're focusing on. The remainder of the building, the 4,000 odd square metres of the remainder of the building is library. And what we have done through that concept plan is to look at how that space is being utilised, and in effect fully renovated it to provide an optimised use. So this is not us subsidising the DHB part, it is to fully optimise and fully renovate the council part, the library element of the building. So if you think of them as two parts, they've worked on the budgeting requirements and the designs to fit within the element that they are renting, and we have looked at the concepts and how to maximise the use and gain the most out of the residual part of the building, which is our library.
Convoluted method of coming to financial conclusion.
Well, it's a way of trying to apportion the costs. Now we have Councillor Gould, then Your Worship, then Councillor Sturt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, thank you for your report. Two questions. Does the joint hub at 12.8 million, does that cover any contingency funds? Any cost increase in the future?
The QS work that was undertaken includes contingencies of all elements. So there's a normal practice that quantity surveyors go through when they produce estimates, and they adhered to that process and included contingencies and in that pricing.
Are we talking about 10%?
I think when you, and again, I can't recall the specifics, but there is set formulas used by quantity surveyors of both elements and of the total project costs. So there's actually different percentages used for contingencies around design costs or individual elements. So there is individual elements, contingencies built into things like the costs of electrical wiring, of design. So there's different factors used by the quantity surveyors in establishing the total costs of the project.
And second question is you've got the health at 3.2 million plus rent, you've got $90,000 per annum rent for 35 years. With normal commercial rents are normally for 3x3 or 6x6x6. So are you talking about rent reviews over a period of time? Or are you having it fixed at $90,000?
No, there would be rent reviews.
Your Worship.
Yes, well, I still think this is an exciting opportunity to get a refurbished library, and that's the point that we've also seemed to have lost in this, seeing, save our library. And I'm not sure where you're going next with Dave's presentation, but for confidence, for me, is the role of the professionals, the librarians, in the detailed design phase. And I'm not sure who's on the working party, and I think when the community understands that, they're going to feel a lot more confident. And for me, for what I have heard, is the issue of access is one of the issues, that the high-level issues that we need to resolve for the community's confidence, that they do get a better library. It's not just fixing the leaks. And also, I'm hopeful that either through the Older Persons Committee, that we do involve those voices, because we heard that when we got the petition. I wasn't here last week to speak to it, sorry, last time. But we did hear the concern that some older people don't want to have to go up. You know, the lift is difficult for them with walking frames and things like that. So if there was an older person's voice in the group that does the detailed design, I think that would be very, very helpful, because that's got misrepresented really, about we're losing so much space and we'll all be bumping together and we won't be able to reach the bottom shelves and things. And I think they'll be confident if they know that there's somebody in there, because their viewers, they love the library, and I couldn't quite convince them that they'll get an even better library. So I think it's about having the right voice in the working party for the detailed design.
Madam Chair, you've touched on some really important elements which are part of that next phase. The detailed design has got to be inclusive, and is inclusive of a number of users and their perspectives. So I think it's probably a really good time for me just to hand over to Dave to talk briefly about the petition and go through the library design part.
And we will let Dave have that opportunity in a minute. I just must let Councillor Sturt have his question.
Thank you. Madam Chair, likewise what the Mayor has just said, I was one of those who voted against going ahead with the additional funds, but having now been on both sides of the fence and seeing the support that we're getting from other funders, I think this is the right way of doing it. Madam Chair, Your Worship made the comment regarding the working party on our side of the, that's the Rotorua Lakes Council side of the fence. In terms of the working party from the DHB, I've never known such an excited team of professionals who believe that they can deliver a one-stop shop for children who have to go all around town for all sorts of services, and they are costing the taxpayers of this country millions of dollars because they don't turn up. They simply don't turn up. And the other misnomer I've seen on the internet, which is just absolutely, I'm not going to swear, but ridiculous, there will not be children sitting in there waiting 6 hours for services. And any emergency matter for children will still be catered for at Rotorua Central Hospital. So I just want to put those two issues to bed. In terms of I agree with Councillor Sarang, in terms of the $6 million that was allocated or announced by the Minister, I too am surprised that it's only $4 million been allocated towards this, and certainly I'll be asking some questions in terms of why the full amount hasn't been allocated. Whether the $6 million included the rent over the 35 years, I'm not sure, but I want to get that clarified. But certainly I implore JP, whoever's involved in the working party, to get alongside the partners so that we can, to a certain degree, do what the Health Board have done and mitigate that 8.8 million, because I think there are funding providers out there who would love to have the Children's Library named the Lion Foundation Children's Library, the research and development sections of the library, etc., etc. And for people to say that they have problems with Zimmer frames going up and down lifts, well, at the Rotorua Hospital we've got lifts that people have to use to go and use physiotherapy and all sorts of other services up and down. So I wouldn't, whilst I hear that, I don't think that's a major issue, but I want a library and a children's hub that is I believe is going to be state of the art, and it's groundbreaking. And I think the government has recognised that this is groundbreaking and that this may be a lead to things for the future to coordinate children's health services and learning services as well. So I wish you well, but I encourage you to try and get the 8.8 reduced, because I'm not happy with that. The original 3.4 came on board after the QV.
Councillor Rokautate, last question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It always amazes me when one sector of the community wants their voice heard, and in this whole episode we haven't heard the voice of the children. And really, what has also not been well stated is that this is a change in the way the services, social services and health services, health wellbeing services are delivered to children. That's what it is. It's a way that we change the services, the service delivery of wellness to our children. And they have actually, that is their facility as well. It's the children's facility as well. And the fact that there's going to be some shared space, great. That's what a community is about. I recall well, and I suspect most of our councillors did, Dr. Johan Moreau, when he returned from Leeds, and he talked about Leeds as being a wonderful child-friendly city. And this is all we're trying to do, is to be inclusive of the children in our city. Rotorua has one of the, unfortunately, the highest levels of DNA in this country, did not attend, and that's with children's appointments. And so if you make it a place where children are happy to go, where they need to go, where people can see that there is something happening, I believe we'll be better off for it. So, of course, we're all concerned about the cost, but this is about ensuring that there's not just one voice heard, that actually the voice of our children gets heard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now, I'm just going to make a comment because I know that Dave will just want to have my 2 cents worth. But I would just say I'm extremely comfortable with the 8.8. I just refer to one project of the backstage of the theatre. Just that small backstage about 7 or 8 years ago cost us $6.5 million. This is a huge library that has been underfunded for many years, and I'm extremely comfortable, and to come in on budget for that, I think we'll be doing very well. So that's my only comment there, and now we've all had our political soundbite. We will now move to Mr. Foster. Thank you.
Success. Through you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. So I move on, first of all, to cover the petition. One of the things about the petition is it really doesn't take a lot of analysis, all right? There are 1,482 petitioners. It's a black and white question. They don't want you to do it. Council's made a determination that you will. Within that, let's not put aside the concerns they raised. They've raised some good concerns. One of the things that did concern us, I think we mentioned it at the last O&M, was a level of misinformation going out around a lot of the stuff, where there were certain elements of scare tactics being used, which we had to put some of our customer service people over there to talk about around that. And people coming in with completely the wrong impression that they advised us, at least, that they'd just been told outside. However, we won't minimise that. Obviously, there are people out there with some concerns, and they will be examined. Where a lot of them are just sort of fundamentally wrong is in shelving space. Okay, so they're actually believing that we're going to be going and making the aisles too small, which will create problems for people, A, going in to find stock, then bending down to get stock and all of that sort of thing. But that's not going to happen. You'll recall we did a presentation to you, I think, on the library strategy around about 8 months ago, I think. And with that, the messages that have been heard is actually that the library does need to change, and I'll get to that in a wee while. And one of the key elements that came out of the strategy actually was less book stock. Right? There's a whole lot less book stock. And I think last month, Jane reported to you that the book stock has been reduced. Fascinating thing about it, but not an unusual thing about it, is as the book stock is reduced, both the turnover rate and the number of issues has increased. So just having a lot of books on shelves doesn't necessarily meet the goal of people borrowing those books, because ultimately that's what they're there for. It's not just there to build up a massive inventory of books that nobody borrows. And of course, the more you have, often, the harder it is to find, which ends up in an element. And the library have been going through reviewing their stock, and there's certain criteria that they utilise. How many times has it been borrowed? A, in its lifetime, B, in the last 5 years, that type of thing. And then they make a call, as basically retailers do also, is it worth the shelf space? And so within that, that's the thing that the library has been looking at. So we will consider, obviously, the points that they've raised in the mix of it. And a number of them we've already sort of talked about. The element of sick kids wandering around all over the place, I think, was one of the concerns they raised. Loss of older people's specs on the ground floor. Space on the ground floor. And that obviously is a concern, because that does mean that any older person who comes in is going to have to go up a floor. But that won't be the circumstance. Right, so the library will be designed in terms of what goes where, what the shelf layouts and what the section layouts are, to fit in with it being a good, usable library in terms of active spaces. So, within that, obviously we're going to have careful design to cater all of the needs. Right, so within there you've got elements of the common space, and really when you think about a common space like this, effectively for the same element of common space, you've got two groups being served as opposed to what would be required for just one. Okay? The building would have needed an entranceway for a library. It would have taken up a certain amount of space. A health hub would include an entryway. It would take up a certain amount of space. So within that, what you are doing is making very good, efficient use for both organisations of that shared space. We cater to the modern library needs and community wellbeing, and there's quite a lot into that came out of the messages that the community gave us. Right? There were certain things in there around information technology, but I'll get to that later. And also provide opportunities for learning and activity. That's really what libraries are about these days. Right? The days of a library being a place that you go in and everything is quiet and you don't talk and all you have is books and maybe a couple of desks for people to make some notes on. They're not true anymore, and that's not what communities are looking for. And the other thing, obviously, is a good coordinated, efficient services and the use of space. So looking to the future, this is what we got out of the strategy, which is quite an important thing for us to look at. I mean, to me, you know, we've got a good library at the moment. The library's, you know, you look at it, it's a good traditional library. But the comment that came back from so many places is it is a traditional library and that it could be so much more. So our decision making is enabled to focus on the future as well as current library users. The strategic plan was developed 2014 and that's designed to be a future focused and encompass technology. And of course within that you're already seeing more technology going into the library. So the library have got the internet service which has expanded quite dramatically. I think they added 20 PCs into the library for people to be able to go in and search the internet and work on the internet. And that's an element where a whole lot of this stuff obviously is going. You know, you'll hear a lot of people talking about digital books and all of that sort of stuff. And that stuff is progressing. So what people told us they wanted was a community hub. Right? It's a place where people go. Digital and online opportunities, and that's a big one going forward. We're seeing more and more digital books, all of that sort of stuff is now available. That's changing how people interact with the library and what sort of things they look to borrow. Right? I mean, I don't know when you last went into a library to find a book on how to do something manual. You don't do that now. If you're looking to do that, you go onto Google and you go in, how do I build a deck? Right? And you get a lot of interactive stuff in terms of videos and so on. So that's actually changing quite dramatically what people are looking for from a library. And so that needs to go in and change. And within that, things need to be meaningful, innovative, relevant learning programs. Right? So the library has got a big push now, and it was a big element in regards to the strategy, which is actually about what happens there and what are the programs that they look to operate. And interestingly, that's an element that you would have also noticed is in the creative strategy, and it's also in the recreation strategy. It's not just about providing places, it's about what happens in those places and what those places are there for. So all of the strategies that we've got have very much focused on, it's not just about a building, it's what happens at that place, because that was why it was built. Right? We didn't build the building to have a library. The library had a purpose, and the purpose is actually about community engagement within that. Likewise, our parks and sports grounds. It's not just about having open green space, although that is significantly valuable. It's also about the sports programs that operate there and what people do in interacting with that space. That's what makes a community tight and cohesive, not just having buildings for a purpose. So within that, a welcome contemporary environment is important. Pardon the spelling of contemporary, it was spelt wrong yesterday and it's still wrong. I think there's supposed to be an O in there, second O in there, isn't there? So yes. So within that, it does need to be welcoming, which means it needs to say something as a place that brings people in. I think it's fair to say that our library provides certain elements of that, but it's not necessarily welcoming to the entire community as it currently stands. And so therefore it does need an upgrade in terms of its internal design at least, and JP has already covered the issues around the building as a whole. Focus on family was an important thing. Whānau and a sense of place. You know, Rotorua is a place, it's a place that people live, it's a place that people feel proud to live in. And our facilities and our programs should be looking to reinforce for people that sense of place. Right? People can live anywhere, but they choose to live in a place because that's where their heart takes them to. Right? A lot of the stuff that people make decisions on in terms of economics and all of that sort of stuff, it's all about head. Right? But what drives an awful lot of people, and particularly in their choice of location, is more the heart stuff than the head stuff often. So partnerships with the community sectors, including iwi, education and health, that fits in with the programs and also fits in with us making sure we're making the optimum use of our resource. So within some of that, we should not be looking to, I won't say undermine, but provide services that other people may be better at providing. Okay, we've got scarce resource, they've got scarce resource. What we need to be doing going forward is actually working in so that we've got a cohesive offering, that we know what their offering is, but also they know what our offering is, and we know how they fit together. The other one, which is important, is strong, relevant print collections for all ages. Right? So while we say we're going to be dropping the book stock, and we will be dropping the book stock, it's not an element of dropping the book stock. As we get that, as we're finding, as that book stock that we're having is more relevant, because there's not a lot of point having irrelevant elements in the section, right? It can then become a problem for people a little bit like a needle in a haystack, right? If you have irrelevant elements in with relevant elements, then sometimes people just get lost and tired of looking. So, the library of the future. There's continued core services. Now, obviously, a library is a place that you go to get books, right? So that's core service. Those sort of things are going to remain. A place that people like to go, that's going to remain. Increased technology and innovation into the mix. Far more selective buying. So more analysis going into what is being purchased, what's sitting on shelves. Library shelving will reduce, but it's not going to reduce because we're having a library and children's health hub. Library shelving is going to reduce because we need to keep a strong collection that fits the needs of the community, not just a big collection, right? So, and often the things that happen with that, to get a big collection, you just keep books on there longer. And of course, if a book doesn't turn over, it can stay on the shelves for 15 years because there's no damage to the book, right? But they don't just sort of deteriorate much when they're sitting on shelves. So it is very much about making sure that the stuff that is there is relevant. So therefore, less stock, but as I say, what we're already seeing at the moment is that a reduced stock is seeing more books go out. And of course, with more books going out, because turnover is a function of how much goes out divided by what you've got on, right? So if you're reducing how much you've got on shelves and you're increasing how much is going out, then you rapidly increase that turnover rate. That will then obviously have some impact on the books that we're going to buy, because the turnover rate is a thing that's going to impact on the lives on shelves. But that's actually not a major problem, because if you want to keep the collection relevant, then you want new stock to be going on to maintain that relevance. So, progress. So, annual plan workshops and the budgets for next year confirm basically that the project fits in with current expenditure limits. Right? The forecast that we've done for this year means that the 800,000 is within the 85% funding envelope. Next year fits within the 85% funding envelope, and we're managing the funding envelope to ensure that that stuff works. The detailed design is underway, and there's quite a group working on that. Jane has a group. There's an iwi relationship group in terms of what's going on within there. A temporary location for the library has been identified and has been signed up. It's the old Van Dyke's building. Right. Yep. So we've been negotiating for that building for quite a while. Got a reasonable rental rate on it. Stavros has done a fabulous job in terms of negotiating with the landowner. That will require an element of refit. That's probably $150,000 to $200,000 of fit out for that. That will be funded out of our operating / capital costs for this year, so it fits in within our funding envelopes. And funding and sponsorship discussions are currently underway, applications underway, but also thinking about the sort of strategic opportunities that may exist, as you say, Councillor Stewart, about naming. So within that, as you say, it's a facility that there'll be an awful lot of businesses who will want potentially to have an association with. So that is currently being worked through. So that's the end of my presentation, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, and we'll open for questions. But just before I do ask for that, councillors, some of you are chit-chatting through presentations. It's very distracting for everyone else, and it's also not very respectful, and you might miss things that are said and have to ask questions afterwards. So I just ask you to, I mean, the odd word here and there is reasonable, but just in this committee, I prefer it if you listen to presentations. Thank you. Right. Councillor Raukawa-Tate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dave. I wonder if you could just go back, please, to the overhead, what people have said they want from our library. Thank you, what the locals have told us they want from our library. I believe that we've done rather a poor job in communicating actually just what you've put up there, because that's really what it's all about. And I think each one of those 7 bullet points is deserving of a story to be told, to be shared, and because it's come from the community itself. And I think this is the changing nature of the library, and why shouldn't we clearly outline to our community that this is what people have said? And it's very true when you look at it. This is actually what the library is going to be, and people have already indicated that. The digital and online opportunities are fantastic for people to go in now and use that. If we put 20 new PCs in, how wonderful is that? So I think that really is something that needs to be well communicated. And it doesn't have to be all in one, but certainly each one of those bullet points is a story to be told. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would just reassure you that that will happen, and with DHB and our media staff. in the plan. You don't want to rush out doing this before we've got everything, signed up, and there's a time to do these things. It's unfortunately, there's been a lot of mischief making before we get to this point, but this is in the plan and it will happen. Right, Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dave, thank you for your report. A quote from your report: careful design to cater to needs of all hub users. Am I right in saying that you're going to make some parts of that a little bit less noisy, or put in restraints so the noise doesn't travel from one part of the building to another part of the building? Because that building at the present time was designed and built in the 1960s, so to me some of the materials used then could do with a huge upgrade to reduce the noise level. I'm talking about the library users against the health users with children screaming their heads off.
Pardon me for laughing. It's not at your question, Councillor. Just the sort of thought of children running, and it sort of comes back to that sick children running around screaming. I think in terms of the shared space, there is going to be shared space and separation of the space. And, even with children running around screaming in the library, that happens even in a library in children's space. I know that personally from my own children and also my granddaughter, who whenever you tell her she can't have something that she wants, as a lot of children do, they get a little bit upset. And also falling. So I think naturally with the building and with the separation of spaces that will exist, you probably are going to have a natural damping of the noise, because on any particular floor you're going to have half of, or not quite half, about 1/3 of the floor which isn't going to be used, so fewer people on that particular floor in terms of interaction. But certainly the design of the spaces and what fits where is going to be a part of the design. And that is actually an ongoing part of what Jane does. So for instance, there was an issue at one stage as to where the PCs were for the internet and how that was working, which Jane's team picked up on, and they have now been moved to a different location because of the elements of the noise and the impact that particular section was having on other users of the library immediately around that.
Just a question, maybe Jane can answer that. I just wonder how long the Rhyme and Rumpus has been going at the library when children have been there, because I'm aware it would be probably at least 24 years, if not longer. When we look at page 23, we can already see that a lot of children use our library. 908 participated in the Myths and Legends holiday program. I see you've mentioned the Rhyme and Rumpus, and I see you've got a Kohangoreo library program up and running. Our library is already catering for a large number of children in there. And I don't remember the uproar that they're all in there. I don't remember that they're actually a part of our community that we want to keep hidden away from our older generation. And certainly every study I've read says that everyone benefits. In fact, there are many rest homes that are bringing young children in for the pure benefit that for the lonely and the elderly in our community gain significantly from that. We only need also to look at the museum and the interactive works they've had up there with the Māori alphabet, and how many children have enjoyed learning in that environment. And I would expect, are we going to see those kind of things in the library in our future build? Time, because I took my youngest, who's now 24, to toddler time.
It was, yes, you're right. It has had a few incarnations. You're right, we do cater for a lot of children, and I understand from the DHB that maybe 70 to 80 children will be coming into the library with their families in a day, which is a very small percentage of the number of people that come through the door. So we have about 1,000 people through the door every day. So, and children do scream, and their parents sort them out, or they leave the library. So we don't think that the noise is going to be a problem for us to cope with, so we're quite happy about it. And the more children that use the library and get the benefits of the programs and activities and the books that are going to be in the library, the better for the community, I think.
I think, oh yes.
I just wanted the assurance that there is going to be somehow the Friends of the Library are included at some stage, and also the Positive Ageing committee that we've got. I know you've briefed them earlier, but as long as we carry them with us, then I think that voice of the older person will be included in the planning.
We're continuing to talk to different groups, and the Friends of the Library, I've been trying to keep them involved at every step of the way. They have considerable funding that they want to put towards this going forward, so obviously we need to make sure that they understand what's happening and where we're going. And there are other groups around. The Positive Ageing is another one. The Youth Council we've talked to. I can't think of any other offhand, but a number of community groups we've consulted with to get to where we are now, and we're continuing to do that going forward.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jane and Dave and JP, for that update. It's really helpful and interesting. And we will now move on then to the rest of JP's report, which takes us up to page 20. So I won't go through each page. If you have highlighted questions, this is your opportunity to ask them. And I know Councillor Rokautate and Her Worship wanted the question about the courthouse. So perhaps if Portia is still here, or if she's not, hopefully JP can answer it. That took a little bit longer than what I anticipated, but hopefully JP knows everything. He's shaking his head. So what was your question, Your Worship?
It was just we'd got to an impasse with the design on the courthouse refurbishment, where we wanted to take away the big bollards for safety, for SIPTEC, and it looks like from in here that you've moved through that barrier that we had on a planning team that involved Ministry of Justice. And I was just interested to know where that's at, because we had to involve our MP Todd to actually get some stuff moving again.
Madam Chair, I can't, we really do need Portia here to explain this one. I understand that we have got through that impasse. I can certainly get the plans that have been approved, because if we're onto this stage now of saying that we're moving forward, I think that has been resolved around the bollards and the SIPTED, the visibility through that courtyard at the front. So I can get that information out to councillors.
Do you want us, Carol said she can get hold of Portia, if you want that answer today.
It can come back at a later meeting, but it's great to see you, because that had got blocked, and that was a concern from us, that blot on the landscape.
Yeah, it's okay.
Madam Chair, actually Rob can answer off this question as well, because I think the
very
landscape architect did the work.
Okay, thanks.
Morning, Council. Yes, we have got past the impasse we had. The design is probably, it's fairly neutral. It's very clearly covers all the SIPTEC principles. It's probably a little neutral, more neutral than we might have liked, but we have got past that, and the program's scheduled to begin, I think, in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Frank?
Shall I take them all at once? All right. Page 13, regarding the local authority elections, I understand Rick is the deputy or second in charge. So who is our provider and who is the electoral officer?
Our electoral officer is Warwick Lamp from elections.com or Elections NZ.
Okay. And page 16, under the planning policy, I would like to know, with the exception of one appeal going to the hearing in March, which appeal is that?
Councillors, I think we've still got confirmed these dates. I can take that question in the confidential section. I'd prefer just to advise you of who we're going to court on.
Well, this says there's only one appeal.
Yes.
So we do that in confidential. Okay, all right. And then on page 18, I note $81.48 a square metre. Is that what that figure is? Which is a bit different from the $45 a square metre for the hospital centre, but never mind. The total figure of 74,838, what budget does this come from?
Just trying to, I recall us going through that a few years ago, didn't we? Because we extended it to 3 years. It's not, I'm not sure, we'll have to find out. Is that an operational budget? Or
My
Thomas?
understanding, it is an operational budget, and what we
Yeah.
looked at was, when we were first looking at this decision, we advised you that we would be reducing the neighbourhood matching fund and providing the funding that we had previously allocated to the neighbourhood matching fund to be provided to undertake these grants. So it's come from a reduction in the neighbourhood matching fund from the 150,000 I believe we had down to 75.
Yeah, we did have 150 there.
And so have we got an explanation as to why we charge these groups $81.48 a square metre, yet we charge the DHB 45 a square metre?
No, we don't. I don't know. We don't charge them $81 a square metre. That's the value. That's the value.
Madam Chair, that's correct. This is the cost of, the estimated cost of what we used for community house as a base rate. Then we heavily discounted it down to, I think it's $32 or $35 per square metre. So that is actually what they do pay. So we were covering below market rental for these groups. So if you recall, when we talked about how we would support these community groups, move out of what is a council discounted facility, is that we turned around and said, look, we'll make sure that you approximately pay the $30 to $35 per square metre by giving you a direct grant to then pay a commercial landlord.
Creating quite a bit of concern for people. The elements, whenever you're looking to set a rent, you've got a number of factors that come into play, and that was very true in terms of when we were negotiating for the Van Dykes, former Van Dykes, I should say. One is the length of the tenure, right? So what's the length that this thing's going to be rented for? The other one is what's the contribution that the tenant is going to be making to the building, either refurbishment, fit out, or whatever. The other one is the quality of your counterparty. And the third one is the length of the tenancy. So within the mix of that, what's gone on in terms of this process is to actually be evaluating all of those elements in terms of the contributions that are coming in to actually determine a fair rate of rental for both parties, and to be picking other elements where they're not really on all fours as a comparator. They're not necessarily good comparators.
But Madam Chair, thank you. You could point out that $300 per square metre is the going rate for a new building, okay? This is not necessarily a new building, but it will be an upgraded building. And I still would argue that $45 a square metre, albeit it's convoluted with the square metres taken up by each respective party, is ridiculously cheap. And therefore, the ratepayer is subsidising the DHB.
That is precisely the point.
Okay, well, okay, so we've said that, yeah. Okay. Any more questions, Councillor
Yes, I've
Sree?
got one more. On page 20, you did say to page 20.
Yes, absolutely.
Under Performing Arts, I'm just interested in the Music Month, the month of May, a series of outdoor performances within the inner city. Can I ask where? Page 20.
Again, I needed the lead advisor just to give me that detail. I can certainly circulate that information out to councillors. I don't have the answer for that one.
I'd be very interested to know, because I think the groups that might be involved need to know, because if you consult the groups, they know the best places to perform anyway. So that would come, you give that information to us?
Is that all your questions now, Councillor Srank?
Yes, to page 20.
To page 20. Right, Councillor McVicker, would you mind turning your mic off? Thank you. So now we have a number of questions up to page 20 from Councillor Donaldson. then Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Rokawatake, and then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine's not a question, it's a comment on page 16 regarding the Rotorua X Incubate program. So Councillor Hunt and I attended the graduations of the X Incubate a couple of nights ago, and it was exciting that it was announced by Darren from the fire station that Enterprise Kawerau funding a minimum of 5 startups from Kawerau to be trained here in Rotorua annually. So in his view, we're fast becoming the startup capital of the Bay of Plenty, so I think it's worth sharing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine is on page 13 in the governance area. Perhaps Jeff, well, somebody can answer this one. The third bullet point on governance there. An elections protocol for elected members will be brought to council at our next strategy meeting. Don't we already have an LGNZ protocol type thing for all councils around the country? Because with respect, I just feel that we know that really it could be a waste of time doing something like this for our council in its present form.
I would just think it's well, I think it's just general information for everyone in a decision. But JP, would you like to clarify or comment?
Through Madam Chair, I'm assuming there's a question there about something like the code of conduct versus this is the electoral process. So this item is really just talking about how you consider the ballot papers and the book relating to candidate profiles should be completed, whether it's in alphabetical order or just a random order. So again, that's a decision that you have to take as a council. So it's just one of those decisions that leads into the next election.
Thank you. Councillor Rokawatake.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 19. It was the second bullet point where the Mayor presented at the United Nations Global Compact Urban Thinkers over on ethical urban development on the 16th. And I don't think, have we ever had something back? Because I wonder, Your Worship, if you can share at some stage some of the things that are happening around the world that we could have picked up on. Was it exciting?
You'll get a formal report. I've met and debriefed with the sustainability portfolio this morning. Oh. So following that debrief back into our portfolio group, we'll get a report back. But it was incredibly exciting to be up there with Peter Costello, World Vision, in a planning session talking about sustainable cities of the future. Was a real privilege to have a New Zealand perspective, and one of the principles that's going to go on to a global summit in Portugal was New Zealand influenced this group to have the Indigenous perspective carried forward to the World Summit, and it was something that hadn't been considered when they talked about sustainable cities. So we've gained that into the principles going forward to a World Summit in October. And that's what we took from Rotorua, the Rotorua way. And but I'll give a report after the debrief this morning.
Councillor Gould.
Chair, page 20, you're talking about planning for the Children's Day is well underway for early March event. Can you please?
That's all. It's all on a website, and it's easy to find out.
The other thing is that the Hamilton City Council have closed down the Founders Theatre because of structural damage, and it's because the building is also 54 years old. Would there be opportunity for the Rotorua staff to contact the Hamilton staff for any bookings over there? The Rotorua facility will be available to accommodate them.
I'm sure our staff will look into something like that, and pretty creative and seeing opportunities. Thank you. All right, now I think we've Councillor Stewart, did you have your hand up? I missed it.
chatting, I'll now ask
That's-
you the questions.
That's a good idea.
So I was asking Councillor Max when he's giving me the feedback, but that's fine.
That's good. I'd prefer
Okay,
you to bring it here.
Firstly, I just want to highlight in the sports and recreation portfolio, just to highlight to you that we are reviewing the membership of the steering group. That once the strategy is confirmed and brought back here and is confirmed, we will then condense down the strategy group so that the way we do the delivery side of things. The other thing is I wasn't going to let Councillor McVicker's comments go regarding the rents. This is a debating chamber regarding the rents. The difference between the community house rents and what the DHB will pay in the size is the DHB are actually putting capital in to that building. The community house people aren't. So there's a difference there straight away.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Sturt. I don't propose to continue this right now. I think we've had a good discussion on the library and I'm sure it will come back again. So now we will move on to the performance and delivery group with Dave, and I'm sure there's quite a number of questions here. So did you want to highlight things through your report, Dave?
No, not really. Our report is pretty much an update on similar themes. Goes from the bottom of 20 through to, keeping on going, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 36.
Yep, we're right up
20
there.
through to 36. So really the issues that are going on are much the same issues. We've already covered the Health Hub. There's an update coming on the wastewater project in terms of where that's up to, the land disposal element. That's occupying quite a lot of time for Andy. Council are aware of other issues, lumber cube and various things going on in the consenting area and compliance area. And the other one, of course, into that is the Food Act.
Just propose to ask you to ask your questions as we go through this. Very much aware we've got airport company and Destination Rotorua waiting to present to us, and we've got another financial paper to get through. So, not that I wish to hurry you, but we do want to just be mindful of that. Right, Your Worship.
Just a comment on, and a question too that can come back later about open spaces staff with working with Rotorua contracting over summer with this exceptional growth. And the phone calls that we've had haven't been like those of other years, but the frequency of mowing, and does that mean that you review the schedule of expectations on frequency, because it has been a hard summer, quite different from drought that we're usually dealing with. This seems to be needing to look at a level of service.
Thank you, Council. We are just in the process at the moment formalising our service level agreements with Rotorua Contracting, and for things like mowing, they are based on maintaining heights. So it's not a frequency game. It's if it grows fast, you've got to mow it more, and it's just managing capacity issues at peak growing periods like we've had. And normally the summertime you can expect a slowdown in growth, but it's been very vigorous, and so it's just making sure that our communications, the community coming to us, back out to Rotorua Contracting is keeping the links that places are getting, perhaps a bit longer than they should be.
Councillor Gould. This report goes right through to 36. Yeah.
Concerning footpaths, I noticed that you've got Mamaku School footpath is due to commence next week, as was a letter to the editor in the last few days complaining about the footpath at Mamaku. And also you put overall some 425 metres completed to date, but on the top line you put we are aiming to replace and or reuse some 1.5 kms of footpaths for the year. To me that means you've got over a kilometre of footpaths to do in 4 months. Is that going to be possible?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 24, 4.3.5, the museum. And there's no doubt the museum numbers are increasing. And absolutely, I'm living just across the road, so I know. But I do want to say that recently I went on a public holiday with a few people to have lunch. The place was full outside, and I thought, right, we'll order our lunch and have a glass of wine, obviously a glass of wine. And there was no wine served that day. I was told that the duty manager was not on duty that day, and so no, they could not serve wine. So obviously that person has a license, manager's license, and there must have been 24 of us outside, and we couldn't get a glass of wine. Not a good look. Not a good look for a holiday location. Actually, not only for our visitors, but for our locals as well. So I just wanted to mention that because it's obvious that the numbers are increasing.
I'm sure staff will hear that. While you're there, I would just say in terms of the museum, I wanted to emphasise that it is doing exceptionally well. And if you see here, the museum exceeded 300,000 K in a month, exceeding the previous record by 50,000. Well, that's really wonderful, and I think that they actually deserve to be congratulated for the huge work that is happening there, and I'm actually really encouraged. I take your point about the wine. Not all of us would be so upset, but having said that, I think overall the museum is doing incredibly well, and I'm really happy to see that result, because we've had a lot of kind of sombre stories for a number of years. Thank you for that, Councillor Maxwell. We will move on now to Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought Councillor Gould was going to raise the issue of the REA on page 35 in the Minister's announcement. Seeing he hasn't, I will. Having been involved in the Connect Rotorua corridor planning and having also attended the Minister's announcement, along with a number of politicians, past and present. And I note that in the media, some politicians, wannabe politicians, have been quoted on this matter as well, on this announcement. Not quoted was myself, who, along with, can I say, not just Eastside Hapu and Iwi, but the Managing Director of Daymar Industries, of Linmore Junction, of Tony Bradley Properties, the Deputy Chair of the Destination Rotorua Board and the Airport CEO have all been in those workshops, and every one of them has resolved that Rotorua's position is the designation must be uplifted to remove all the uncertainty and the locking up of economic growth in the east side of Rotorua. There are comments in the media attributed to Her Worship the Mayor that she says she has caved into pressure from iwi and wants the land returned to iwi. Now, it's my understanding that no land has been taken from iwi because they refuse to sell it. The only land that is acquired has been acquired on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. So that's another myth that's out there. And so I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm sure Stavros can elaborate or enlighten us on the actual effect of the funding and the treatments that can be applied.
Without asking you to take a great length over this, just could you update us? I know Councillor Gould brought up earlier and he wanted an urgent business, but it needs to be in the operation part of the particular plan. Just a little bit of the design, and he was talking about, he was concerned there was going to be some sort of overpass or something like that. So I just wonder how far we are on the detailed design. Stavros.
Yep, through you, Madam Chair. Good morning. The fact on the ground is that, as Deputy Mayor outlined, that throughout a number of workshops, in the last 12 months, which was a multi-stakeholder participation, the NZTA board received a recommendation from the workshop and NZTA officers, basically saying that Tenai is a viable alternative to the REA designation, and the recommendation is to lift the designation and allow the TNI improvements to take place. So, and as Deputy Mayor outlined, obviously, a number of comments about that. I think one of the things that has been slightly overlooked in the communications of the Minister is the fact that the Minister has instructed NZTA to go back and convince him basically that TNI has got a viable program of long-term works to become a viable alternative to the REA. And one can look at it half glass empty, half glass full, approach. Basically, NZTA will now, in conjunction with a detailed business case for these short-term interventions, the $24 million spoken by the Minister relate to the next 2 years, of interventions. It's been already funded by NZTA, and there are work programs that need to be completed in the next 2 years. But if people study the work of the workshops and the NZTA report, it identifies progressively over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, incremental improvements, to TNI, which may involve at some point in time, great separation on Tarawera, great separation on Sala, 4-laning all the way to the airport, interventions at Ofata, interventions in front of the airport and Eastgate and so on. The only question that NZTA will need to satisfy the Minister is that by implementing all these incremental improvements, they're certain that the designation is no longer needed. And we are convinced in the workshop that the TNI actually is a viable alternative, and in effect, I think NZTA will be forced to reconsider the timing of these interventions. We know for sure at the moment, for the next 10 years, they will spend $24 million on these short-term interventions. We will talk about $10 million for the revocation of State Highway 30A, Amo House Street, and so on. But also, we need to come back with some detailed design and timing for implementation for longer-term, wider-scale projects. And the value of these projects is still to be decided through the construction of detailed business cases on a stage-by-stage basis.
Councillor Stewart.
Madam Chair, whilst I support, and I hear what you say, Dave, unlocking the economic development of the Rotorua area, also a huge impediment to the economic development of Rotorua is retaining that designation, because there is a hell of a lot of landlocked land in there that people want to develop, and there is opportunities for that to occur. I really sit here, Madam Chair, it is so ironical that only 4 years ago, when they were trying to beat up the people at Ngāpuna, that this designation was the holy grail, and that the Tenai Road option was absolutely rubbished. The second option was the Vaughan Road development, and if you dig out those reports, and I'm going to dig them out, the NZTA have got egg all over their face. Tenai Road has always been the viable option. The corridor's there, the infrastructure's there. Over at Taronga, Madam Chair, and this is what really gets me, Taronga seems to get everything at the drop of the hat. Rotorua is the poor cousin. They've now got traffic lights at the Mangatapu roundabout, the Welcome Bay Mangatapu roundabout, and that's now up for redevelopment. They're putting an underpass so the Welcome Bay people don't enter into the roundabout. So they seem to get innovation and buckets of money thrown at them. Stavros has already said that this $24 million isn't new money. It was money that was programmed anyway. So who's pulling the wool over our eyes? In terms, I get quite emotional about this because I was the only one who stood out for Tenai Road. In all the voting, I said it was a waste of money, the Eastern Arterial route, and so it has been proved over time. Now, the options of underpasses and overpasses are issues that have to be addressed, because you've got a community that has to go across the road every day, whether it's the elderly to the shops, otherwise that side of the road is going to be alienated. So in the $24 million, my question to you is, Stavros, in the $24 million, is the issue of access to both sides of the road been addressed or not, please?
The inside the $24 million envelope, there will be, improvements to access inside those intersections of Sala, Tarawera, and from Tarawera to Isles, However, and that's what I was alluded earlier, is that we need to sit down with NZTA and consider the whole corridor and the staging of these corridors. And obviously the degree of security of access, or the ease of access, will improve with the amount, proportional to the amount of money invested. A great separation, obviously, in Tarawera gives you a much better sort of, ability to cross, safer and more conveniently. But again, these are decisions that need to be taken on, in considering on step-by-step basis.
I did have my hand up, and it was about the grade separation at the Tarawera roundabout. It seems nonsense to me to not include that in up front, because you'll never get a crack to go back and do more roundabout designs. It was also, I thought certainty was definitely needed for the lights at Linmore Junction. That was one of the issues that's been of great concern brought to us from Ryan there, and the airport roundabout. So I look forward to the business case, and I'd want to reiterate that the reason why we are now supporting Tenai Road is because we worked collaboratively with iwi at the table, with business at the table, and with NZTA and Council. And that's why the business case now must be developed for Tenai Road. And that's what's changed. And it's a new style of working, and I congratulate you, Stavros. You've had the right people round the table, and with the right people round the table, we're going to make the right business case decision for the medium to long term.
But I don't think we know that yet. We've got to have the business case first. Stavros, please clarify.
Well, obviously, as I said, the minister has instructed NZTA to give him one final assurance that there is a detailed program of works to satisfy his intention to ensure that Tenai is a long-term viable corridor for that. On the 17th of this March, we're having a meeting with the local Hapus and the iwi which NZTA will give us a detailed outline as to how they intend to satisfy that requirement and the effect on the designation. But I would expect, again, it's my view, that I would expect over the next month or 6 weeks or so on, the NZTA will be able to reconfirm to the minister that Tenai is a viable option and the designation is no longer needed, and therefore recommend to lift the designation and start the process of returning the land back to the owners.
Now, Councillor Bentley, was yours in relation to this REA? Yes. So, and was yours, Councillor McVicker? Okay, because I'm aware Councillor Srank had her hand up some time ago, but that's all right then. So, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It appears to me that this council in the last couple of years, or the last 12 months that Stavros has been here, has totally changed the direction of where they're going with regard to this Eastern Arterial, in that in the mid-1960s, 50-odd years ago, the experts of the day decided that in the future an Eastern Arterial may be needed. So they started purchasing land with that in mind. I think it is a little bit hasty to disregard 50-odd years of knowledge inside 12 months and have our reliance totally upon Tenai Road. I don't think that in 30 years' time you're going to be thanked for that decision.
I think it's difficult to answer that. I mean, we're going through a process and there'll be another opportunity to bring that up. Okay, Councillor McVicker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would echo Councillor Bentley's thoughts exactly. I believe it's a short-term view. I think Stavros has made reference to short-term interventions, and it worries me the fact that we may have $24 million, which is great, yes, but that will only do so far. Then we'll have to put our hand out and get more. You know, we should be asking for $100 million at the end of the day. We'll need more than that, I would suggest, because I am concerned, as Peter said, or Councillor Bentley said, 20, 30 years' time, you know, where are we going to be? Because I'm not convinced Tinai is the alternative.
Councillor Donaldson have one more opportunity on this subject. Then Jeff would like to say something, and I think we move on from this particular topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just responding to, you know, retaining the thinking of 1963. I mean, that says it all. It's sat there since 1963, and the NZTA are telling us there will be no case to build an arterial, separate arterial, for another 30 years. So for that length of time, you have all that land sitting on our district plan that is locked up from any development. Now, have we had anything like that sitting over our western corridor, and yet we've gone and upgraded Fairy Springs Road so we get better traffic flow? We still have an issue with the roundabout at Nongataha, as Councillor Stewart regularly reminds us, but we don't have something sitting over an alternative route out to the west that's stopping any development out there. So this is just nonsense to continue this for almost a century and have all this grievance sitting against us, in my view.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the concern that's been echoed with regards to the risk of removing the designation. One of the key things that comes through from the working groups is that the biggest barrier to development is uncertainty. And certainty is actually the requirement that's needed here, both in terms of land availability and future transport options. The certainty in terms of the process that Stavros is driving is actually coming through from the spatial plan. The spatial plan will be a document that's developed in conjunction with the Transport Agency, and it is actually looking at the future growth of this district in the longer term. That will then be used to drive the development of the business case and the ability of the Tinai Road route to be able to cope with the level of traffic that will be there in the longer term. The other issue that I think that we've got is that clearly Councillor Stewart has touched on the problem of having a designation for 50 years and not being able to actually use land, and that's a level of uncertainty. But equally so, having the designation also creates uncertainty that stops investment into Tinai Road. So the lack of investment over subsequent or successive years in Tinai Road has meant that effectively the Transport Agency have taken a view, we won't invest in that corridor because it's not the future. But we're not going to invest in the arterial either until there's sufficient growth. So therefore Rotorua remains or sits with a transport solution that is not fit for purpose. So I'm confident that this process that Stavros is leading will actually be staged in a way that we do look at future growth projections, that we do look at Tinai Road and the requirements for Tinai Road, both to connect the communities that it separates, but also to act as an effective transport corridor. And then with partnership with NZTA, and I am pleased that they are really on board now, they are behind the business planning process, and they themselves are saying the announcement gives certainty for short-term investment. But their view is that this is in their budget, but it is only a budget. What is required in terms of funding will only be finally dictated once we know what is needed and when.
Now up to the end of Dave's report. Councillor Sarank.
Chair, and just clarify one issue. If speakers were referring to the fact that any of us thought that large blocks of Maori land had been purchased, we were very aware that they hadn't, and are not part of the 80% of the land that has been purchased. So I'll just clarify that matter. Just page 27. When you work out the number of days used, it's just that I'm up near the stadium just about every day, and I see 22 days out of 26 I don't see evidence of it. So is that even if there's a meeting in one of the rooms, that's considered of use? How are those figures? Does that include the athletic meeting, which is held every Tuesday? And what else does it include? Because I don't see 22 days out of 26.
It includes the two grounds of the stadium, so not only the main number one ground, but there's a lot of use on the two. Yeah.
Oh, that explains that figure then. Okay, so perhaps in the International Stadium it should be clarified that it does include the lower ground, number two ground. It's a bit confusing otherwise. And the other one was on page 33 in regard to rural seal. Second box down, where it says that the LTP funding provides for a gradual sealing of these roads and approximately 4 kilometres per annum can be sealed. Is that based on a dollar figure, not on the distance?
Well, we do estimate about, between $150,000 and $200,000 per kilometer is needed, depending on the local circumstances,
yeah,
to reseal a kilometer of road. And obviously, with the amount of funding we've got, that translates about 4.5 kilometers.
So have we got a set figure for rural seal, or is it a set distance?
We've got a set budget figure for rural seals, which translates to about 4 kilometers per year. That's in our LTP budget.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Srank?
No, thank you.
Councillor Gould?
Page 35, access, addressing the growing demand for improved pedestrian facilities. I'm talking about the new pedestrian crossings in town. What I'm concerned about, are they totally legal? Because we've got a new Work and Safety Act coming into place on the 1st of April, which means that if an accident happens, the Chief Executive is liable if the service is not correct.
Every pedestrian crossing that is in the, anywhere in the district is legal.
Moment, Councillor Okawate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 35 and it's around this top section, corridor planning. Can you tell me, Stavros, about the Hemapol Gorge roundabout? Is that likely to be undertaken, possibly completed before this Christmas?
The works will commence hopefully around May. It will not be completed before Christmas. The work program, I think, it anticipates an 18-month construction period. But, NZTA is in the process of securing all the required sign-offs to commence the work around May this year.
Of clarification for my own information in regard to the red and white pedestrian crossings, I've always understood that if you were on a bike and wished to go across the pedestrian crossing, that you had to get off the bike and walk with the bike. Is that true or false?
Correct. A zebra pedestrian crossing does not permit a cyclist priority. It's priority for pedestrians. However, the common practice, of course, is that a cyclist needs to ride on a pedestrian crossing, in awareness. This is a slow zone that's shared with pedestrians, but it is is dedicated to pedestrians, not cyclists.
Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for Stavros. I hear you just then refer to it as a zebra crossing. To me, a zebra crossing is black and white, and hopefully they're not going to change anytime soon. The question I have for you is that with people on sticks, the amount of paint that is on the... Pardon me?
Councillor Bentley, continue.
With people with sticks, they find that the amount of paint that we now applying to these things incredibly slippery, and it's not providing, I think, a very safe environment at all.
I suppose there are two elements to your question, Councillor Bentley. One is what is a zebra crossing. The guidelines, for warranted pedestrian crossings, or commonly called zebra crossings, do not specify that you have a wide block lines against the black asphalt. The background can be any color, and as a matter of fact, at the national level and international level, you find backgrounds could be anything from yellow to green to yellow to orange, whatever you want. So the zebra crossing definition is a wide line blocks, perpendicular, to the carriageway. Now, with regards to the background, whether it's presenting any issues with people on walking sticks or Zimmer frames or I don't know what the issues that I'm not aware of it, but certainly if there are issues with regards to skid resistance, and slippery faces, certainly, look into. I have not been made aware of any problems, anywhere like that.
Any complaints, we'll make sure they come through and we'll act on them and see what people say. Very quickly, are we heading towards the end of page 36? I think we are. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, just on the issue of paint. Jodie Lawson, our Sustainable Transport Coordinator, presented at Green Drinks on the Urban Skyway program, and the question was asked of her, why haven't we painted all the cycleways solid green? Now, she pointed out there that our choice of the paint is very expensive, and one of the reasons it's expensive is it's anti-skid paint that is used. So I would assume it's the same sort of expensive anti-skid red paint that we've stuck on the pedestrian crossings.
I'm just aware of the media, comments about, the pedestrian crossings and courtesy crossings, in the city. Just going to make a couple of comments. If you recall, back on the 4th of February, I came to this committee and presented the status of the Skyway project, our cycling network. Within that presentation, I have outlined that we have a group, an advisory group that comprises a great number of people, which has developed what we call a code of practice for the implementation of our Skyway, in the districts. Inside that code of practice, we have decided that where we're going to have zebra pedestrian crossings or courtesy crossings are places where pedestrians and cyclists can cross the road, but they do not have the priority. But we mark them to give them a high level of definition, direction, wise. We have decided that red background is the color to be used, and that was in my presentation on the 4th of February. Albeit I have not gone into great detail at that point in time, but I noted that we have developed that code of practice to be applied uniformly across the city. When we have done the safety assessment of the inner city green corridor, which now is part of the Skyway, we have continued to respond to those concerns about our definition and a risk level by applying the commonly to be used code of practice across the district. And that is the background to that.
Right. Councillor Johnson, can you turn your mic off? Right, Councillor
Just on page 31, with the CBD operations, you and I, Madam Chair, asked for this report at the last round of meetings. I'm pleased to see the CCTV trailer has been located. I just hope that it can be operated. I noticed there's nothing in the CCTV report for Nongatara or Western Heights. And on page 35, the corridor planning, how can I get the Nongatara issue up on the table?
Councillor State, Nongotaha roundabout is already on the table, and when I alluded earlier to us now sitting and doing the detailed business case investigation, with NZTA, will include the Western Corridor, which is from Nongotaha all the way to, Himo Gorge, Central Corridor, and the Eastern Corridor. All these things will be addressed as part and parcel of our detailed business case.
Through you, Madam Chair, would it be appropriate to go direct to NZTA to alleviate the issues with regard to Nongatara? Because there's only two peak times, it's in the morning and at night, when the cars are right back to the Waititi Bridge. taking 40 minutes to get into the city. As we've all said over the years, and I know Councillor Donaldson supported me, all we need is a through lane for the traffic travelling from Nongatara into the city so they don't engage into the roundabout. That would mean a bit of four-laning out of the roundabout, I agree. And the excuse they've used over the years is that there's a whole lot of underground services there. Well, that doesn't wear with me. So I just wondered, through you, Madam Chair, Stavros, if we could approach NZTA to look at a temporary solution until the business case is done, because it is having an economic impact on Nongatara. The shops, you can't get in and out, you can't reverse between 8:30 and 9:30, and between 2:30 and 3:30 to 4 o'clock. So it's impacting businesses in that village and the flow of traffic. One of the symptoms of this problem is a good symptom, is that 1,000 more people have chosen Rotorua to live, and the vehicles coming down from State Highway 5, particularly on a Friday night, coming to enjoy what famously Rotorua has said Rotorua provides, and then thousands are coming with mountain bikes on their cars. It creates that problem again. So I just wondered whether there was an opportunity to talk directly with them.
I mean, of course there's an opportunity, and then I have been talking to NZT about that, and as I said, all I can promise you is to continue to push, for interim solutions to it, and I will do that.
We've had good discussion on that, so thank you very much, Dave, and for your team for presenting your operational part of the committee. And I now propose to go to page 41 for the CCOs, and we'll come back to Thomas's later. I want to have a 5-minute break first, because I know the CCOs have got presentations, and we'll go with the regional airport and destination Rotorua with Mr. Peter Stubbs first, and then to Rotorua contracting. So we'll do those first. Yes, Councillor Maxwell. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Maxwell. I just really am feeling very concerned the length of time. They're waiting. I will come back to page 37 afterwards. I will come back to page 37 afterwards. 5-minute break. Thank you.